now. Legal challenges cloud Trump's tariff powers as India faces 50% levy. A court of appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled that most of the reciprocal tariffs imposed by President Trump are invalid. Trump has called it unacceptable. Watch a special report to understand what it entails.
What US President Donald Trump feared the most has now happened. He waged an economic war with the rest of the world by imposing tariffs that he feared would be ruled illegal by the courts in the United States. That is exactly what has transpired. On August 29, a court of appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled that most of the reciprocal tariffs imposed by President Trump are invalid, upholding a lower court's decision. The appeals court stated that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or the IEEPA, which Trump had invoked to impose many of his reciprocal tariffs, did not give such unfettered powers to the president. Trump was left seething. While the tariffs will still remain in effect until October 14th, providing the US government time to appeal against the 7-4 ruling of the appeals court in the Supreme Court, he slammed what he described as a partisan court and claimed that the removal of tariffs would spell disaster for the United States. While the judgment of the appeals court mentioned the tariffs initially imposed against Canada, China and Mexico, Trump had also invoked the IEEPA when imposing 25% reciprocal tariffs against India on the 31st of July, among a whole host of other countries. So why were most of Trump's reciprocal tariffs deemed invalid? The President of the United States had clearly overstepped his brief. Let's examine what the court said. The reciprocal tariff was struck down because the IEEPA does not include powers to authorize reciprocal tariffs. Other legislation explicitly talk about tariffs, but not the IEEPA. Congress did not intend to give President unlimited powers under the IEEPA. The power to regulate under the IEEPA does not mean power to impose tariffs. Never has a previous American president used the IEEPA to impose tariffs. There was no congressional authorization for Trump to impose tariffs, and the executive in the United States does not have unchecked powers, even in matters of foreign policy. For a country like India, which faces 50% tariffs from the United States that includes a 25% penalty, or sanctions as the American administration has called it, for purchasing Russian oil, this judgment is an affirmation that Trump's actions may be rooted in illegality. After all, the IEEPA was also invoked against India for buying oil from Russia. The Trump administration is livid. His aides, including the American Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, warned of the consequences of the judgment that striking down the tariffs would mean telling the world that America lacks the resolve to defend its economic and national security. It seems inevitable now that the Supreme Court in the United States will be the final arbiter in deciding whether these tariffs are legal. Donald Trump has many battles to fight, most of them of his own doing.